It's time to spring clean those Pinterest boards. I am so excited about spring almost being here. So in the spirit of the season, I am hosting, or I should say sharing, a 3-part series all about cleaning up and optimizing your Pinterest account. Now, if you missed it, the first video or the first episode I shared about spring cleaning your Pinterest account was all about optimizing your profile. So that covered your profile name, your bio, your cover photo, and your profile picture. So be sure to go back and watch that episode if you missed that. But like I mentioned in today's episode, I am sharing all things spring cleaning your Pinterest boards. I'm Emily Bales. I'm a Pinterest marketing expert and coach. And for almost 5 years now, I've helped my clients and my students increase their traffic and turn it into profit through the power of Pinterest marketing. So we want to be covering boards because boards are such an important part of your overall Pinterest strategy and ultimately your Pinterest growth. So in case you're new here, Pinterest is a visual search engine. And with the nature of a search engine, you have to understand keywords for your business and your niche in order to really be successful on the platform. If you want to learn all things Pinterest keywords and how to find them for your business, be sure to check out the other videos that are linked in this episode, because I do have multiple episodes about doing keyword research for your business and also where in the world do you even start with doing keyword research. I also do have a workshop. It is a paid workshop, but it is called the SEO Pinterest Expert. So hence the name, you are learning how to become an SEO expert in terms of marketing on Pinterest. So that also might be something really helpful to check out. That will also be linked in this YouTube episode. So let's talk all things boards now. Before we take a look at my own Pinterest account where I can be showing you my boards and honestly some things that I could tweak on my own account, let's talk about what your Pinterest boards are. I think especially with people who are newer to Pinterest, it can be very confusing about the boards and the pins and what's what and what goes where. And I just want to say, I totally understand if you find Pinterest a little bit confusing. It is a lot different than social media, and I believe that the learning curve is a little bit bigger on Pinterest, and it also makes it so unique and special. It's a place where people come to get inspired, where their ideas can come to life through being able to visualize them through pins, and it's such a positive platform. And it's also a really great way to grow your business and ultimately your profit. But in order to do so, you have to make sure you're connecting with the right audience, which goes back to those keywords. Pinterest users are entering in keywords, and that is how they are discovering your content. Now, your Pinterest boards can not only rank in Pinterest searches, but your Pinterest boards can also rank on Google, which is huge and also amazing. I always have to crack up a little bit when I have actually performed Google searches and the top ranking or most relevant piece of content that comes up is a Pinterest board. And it's also really cool too. And it's like, oh, another reason why I love Pinterest. So let's talk about what they are doing on your account. Your boards are essentially your content buckets. Your boards are housing your pins. So we have pin designs, and what we do with those pins is we save them to specific boards. So like I mentioned, they're essentially content buckets. So for example, I share all things Pinterest marketing, but when I think about my different content buckets, there's lots of different topics I speak on. I speak on Pinterest strategy. I speak on Pinterest SEO. I speak on, at one point, I had a board even for idea pins in that specific unique pin format. I speak about increasing Pinterest traffic. I speak about Pinterest management. You can see that there's so many different topics within Pinterest that I cover, and it's nice to have those different specific boards to really compartmentalize those different topics. And you want to make sure that not only your board title optimized, but there's also something called your board description. And hence the name, the description is telling the Pinterest user more about what they're going to find on that board. One thing I want you to understand about Pinterest is that anywhere and everywhere that you can use and optimize keywords, you need to do so. I never recommend keyword stuffing, and I have seen that where I've gone to somebody's Pinterest board and they have a board title, but in the board description, they just have, hundreds of keywords. It really creates a weird user experience, and it feels a little spammy that you haven't written that for somebody to actually read, but you're just trying to get your content to rank. And I get it, you want to include all those keywords, but just write it as if somebody's actually going to be reading it and that's providing value to somebody. That's always a better strategy. And it is going to make more sense when we actually look at this on my Pinterest account. So that's why I'm going to wrap this up here in a second. We're going to jump over to my Pinterest account, but I did want to cover really what the purpose of is with your boards, and also why you want to make sure that they are fully optimized. When we're checking out my Pinterest account, we are also going to be talking about, should you use board sections? Should you join group boards? Are group boards still relevant? So you're going to want to make sure to continue to watch so you get the answer to some of those questions that I frequently still get asked in terms of Pinterest marketing and your boards. So without further ado though, let's go ahead and jump over my Pinterest account, because I think this is going to make way more sense when we can look over there at my boards. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Okay, so here we are inside my Pinterest account, and we are going to be assessing my boards and essentially looking for ways that we can clean them up and optimize them. And like I mentioned, whether you've done this before, you've never done it, it is a great practice, because there's always things that we can be doing and changing and optimizing. And especially when we have been in a routine and maybe occasionally we've added some boards, sometimes things slip our mind, and it's good to go back and just double check really important aspects of having an optimized Pinterest account, optimized Pinterest boards, such as, are the titles fully optimized? Does every board have a strong board description? Do I have boards that are not relevant to my niche? So those are some things we're going to be looking at on my Pinterest account. And I'm going to be the first to say that I feel as though I should be perfect in terms of Pinterest, because that's all I talk about. But I'm also human. And I not only still serve clients, but I serve my students. And I have a lot of different ways that I'm supporting people. And sometimes that means there are things that I could even fine tune on my own platforms. And I am not too proud to acknowledge that. But I also think that it serves as a really great example of what you could be doing on your own Pinterest account. So let's go ahead and check out my boards. And I'm going to give you a few different examples. And I do want to mention that I do have other YouTube videos all about optimizing your Pinterest board. So of course, like I shared, in the nature of cleaning things up and spring being here, this is going to still be applicable no matter what the time of year or season is. But I also have really specific YouTube videos that go even more in depth in terms of SEO and naming your boards. So if I am glossing over or brushing over things in regards to naming your boards and how important that is, go back and watch some of those other YouTube episodes. I think that you're going to find those really helpful. So without further ado, let's go ahead and check out my boards. So when you log into your Pinterest business account, because that is definitely what you're going to have in order to market on Pinterest, you're going to see the Created tab. So you can see here, this is showing all of my pins that I have created. In order to look at my Pinterest boards, I'm going to click on Saved. Now, as a quick recap, your boards are essentially your content buckets. So your boards are housing your core content. So if you have 200 boards, yes, you might have boards that are pretty specific, and that can be a really good thing in terms of SEO, but you're probably not pinning to all those boards regularly, and some of them really just might not be necessary to have, and that's okay. That's why we assess things, we optimize, we revisit and clean up things that might need to be cleaned up. So one thing that I do when I'm actually performing a Pinterest account audit, I will actually count how many boards there are. And if there is an insane number, I start to think, okay, we're probably not pinning to all these boards consistently. What boards are necessary? What boards are essentially inactive? And sometimes when we have made a board that is too specific, then we don't have enough content really to fill that board or pin to that board regularly. And then I start thinking, how could this be lumped in with a topic that's maybe a little bit, or another board I should say, that's maybe just a little bit more broad? It can be very beneficial though, when you are naming your boards to be specific though, because your boards can rank not only on Pinterest, but also Google. And when you have such a broad name for a board, it becomes more challenging to rank for those specific pillar keywords. So pillar keywords are 1 to 2 words. Long tail keywords are typically 3 to 5 words. So for example, a pillar keyword for me might be Pinterest ads. Okay, that's 2 words. So when you're thinking about, and here's an example, I was looking at somebody's boards recently. It was actually one of my students. This is something that's so nice for my students because when they enroll in my Pinterest Manager Academy, not only do they have the formal education and training, but then they're getting hands-on coaching from me so that if they have any questions, anything comes up for them as they're doing testimonial work, as they're working with clients, they have me as their personalized coach in their back pocket, which is kind of priceless, right? So one of my students had asked me, will you look at the boards? I've already done this audit, but I would love to hear your feedback and if there's anything I'm missing. And she mentioned, I got a little nervous as I started looking at boards, and it can be overwhelming. It's a lot. And then we start to question things and we can get into analysis paralysis for sure. So sometimes it's pure gold to just have another set of eyes and another perspective, okay? So sometimes my students, and I shouldn't say sometimes, I would say 95% of the time, from what they've learned, their intuition is right on. Most of the time, they are not missing the mark, and they just need that reassurance that you do know what you're doing, and you were exactly right. You could maybe expand upon this. So that's kind of my little side note there. So when I was looking at the boards for this person though, where I was going with that student had asked me about, I noticed that some of their boards were so broad. For example, one of their boards was just titled travel. Okay, so that's very broad. Another one might be renovation ideas. So broad. So we want to kind of balance this where it's not too broad, but also not so specific that we don't have enough content over it. Because if we only have one piece of content that pertains, or maybe even one product that pertains to this specific board, it might not be enough to be pinning to that board consistently. And then it might not make as much sense, and it might make more sense to maybe merge that with another board. And that is something that you can do when you're cleaning up. If you find that you do need to merge 2 boards and it makes more sense, then you can absolutely do that. But it's important to understand that when you merge boards, you can't then separate them back out. So you're gonna have to be committed to that merge. So I wanna give a few examples. Like I mentioned, I always am counting the boards, thinking of what do we need? What do we not need? One thing I also pay attention to when I'm counting boards is I also assess how many group boards is that person a part of. I had a client once who was literally a part of over 100 group boards. And I believe that she had probably joined all these group boards when there was a time where business owners had essentially found that pinning to group boards, especially group boards where there were creators with a lot more followers or a lot more traction, or maybe they had been on Pinterest longer, that it was also improving their pin distribution to pin to those same group boards. So it wasn't even necessarily that they were collaborating with each other. They were kind of feeding off of each other's essentially audiences in a way. So Pinterest figured this out. They kind of put the kibosh on that, and they really stressed to business owners to be utilizing group boards for what they were created for. Small group collaborations, not hundreds of people on a group board, but this one, baby shower ideas, it was literally just me and my sister, and we were planning a baby shower for our other sister. That is the way that Pinterest intended those group boards. This is also secret. It has nothing to do with my niche. And I'm also, I'm no longer pinning to that. The showers already happened. I could even archive that board. So is it a huge deal? No, I'm not pinning to it. It's not doing anything. I could just go ahead and clean that up and I could get rid of it. So if you want to archive that board, go ahead and click on it, and then you'll see those 3 dots at the top. And then you could just scroll down and click on archive. I believe I have since pinned to that board, even though I was no longer collaborating with my sister. Clearly not too many pins, there's 11 pins, but this past fall I did actually host a baby sprinkle for my sister-in-law, so I might have even put a few pins on there. So I did leave it, but I don't know what the future will look like. If I will ever host another baby shower, I could leave it. It's not really doing anything. One thing that one of my students asked me that I thought was a really good point, because you can see I have a lot of secret boards, ideas for my classroom, holiday ideas I want. It's so funny how we used to use Pinterest. I used to have these like subliminal, things I would pin where I'm like, oh, hopefully, my boyfriend sees it. So if you have boards that, and sometimes I would just see style or things that I wanted to remember. If somebody asked me what I wanted for my birthday or something, that I had these ideas saved of things I actually really wanted, that can also be helpful. But I actually really don't pin to that board anymore. You can actually see the I want board. I haven't pinned to that in 6 years. DIY, that's actually been a year. Healthy recipes 5 weeks ago. It's kind of interesting too, like wedding 10 years ago. Oh, that's so bittersweet because this summer I will have been married 10 years. That is something that I have gone back, it sounds silly, and looked at that board, and I kind of love that I still have that and that inspiration, and it reminds me of those feelings. So if you have, in a weird way, some sentimental attachment, it's not harming anything, but it is, you can clean it up just by archiving if you want to. So these are some things to think about when you're looking through your boards. And I started to say this and then I kind of went off on another track there, but when you're looking at the secret boards, one of my students had asked, if my client has secret boards, so they're using their account for both business and personal, if they have personal boards that they are pinning to, is that messing up the algorithm and telling Pinterest what they're interested in? And because the volume and the amount of content that you're pinning for your business is probably outweighing your personal, I know that I still do use Pinterest a lot for my personal use, but I am pinning multiple times a day to my own Pinterest account. And for my personal use, I'm not even always pinning things daily on Pinterest. I might look something up, but I don't even necessarily even pin something daily for myself. So the volume for my business way outweighs my personal use. Now, if the business owner is just going crazy for personal use and you do find you're concerned about that messing up Pinterest understanding your content or what you're about, that's one thing. But the thing is too, is that your audience also isn't going to see that content because they can't see those boards. They're made secret. So that's one thing to think about, but I really try not to stress too much about that. I find that a lot of my clients I work with, they might occasionally pin something, but they're really busy too, and they might not use Pinterest as much personally as they did, at one point in time. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know in the comments of this YouTube video if you have any questions about that, or if you have any questions about anything I've already touched on. I know that assessing your boards can feel like a lot. I already mentioned that even with my students when they are assessing or doing an account audit for a business owner, that it is a lot to go through and view everything, think about when they pinned it last and all of those pieces. So, it's one of those things where if it's overwhelming, set a timer, work on it for 30 or 40 minutes, come back again, and you can even just initially go through and assess, do all of these boards pertain to my niche? If they don't, just go ahead and make them secret, the ones that don't. That does not need to take a long amount of time. Then once you have done that, you've made secret any boards that don't pertain, I do want you to assess the amount of group boards and consider leaving group boards that you aren't actively pinning to, just because you don't need to have all those boards. I really want you to have a solid amount of your own boards for your core content and really focus on those boards and less about group boards, just because they don't improve our pin distribution. I think that you should really focus, and your strategy should be your own boards. You can go to your Pinterest analytics, and I do have another YouTube video all about understanding and assessing those Pinterest analytics. You can look at your best performing boards, and I do touch on that in that YouTube video. So definitely check that out if you're wanting to learn more about that, but you can actually see what boards of yours are the best performing. And if you have a group board that just performs phenomenally, then of course, okay, don't fight it, just keep pinning to it. But for the most part, I don't find that is the case at all for me, or really my clients. So they just don't work that way anymore. So as I'm going through, I'm just double checking everything, making sure that everything that I'm pinning, it pertains to my niche and my business. Occasionally I will have a board where how'd that sneak through, where you created it and then you forget to make a secret. And you can see some of these boards at the top. That's not what people are seeing on my account. I did recently just create those boards thinking of some different ideas for our home. So you can see it's definitely very personal to me. Now what I'm going to go through is I'm going to start assessing my board titles, and also if every board has a solid board description. So when I'm looking at this, Pinterest tips for businesses, that is a pretty specific board title. I am good with that. Like I said, it's not just Pinterest Pinterest wouldn't be enough context, right? And so this is Pinterest tips for businesses. And I share a lot of Pinterest tips for businesses and regularly, so this makes a lot of sense for me to have. You can see here I have an optimized pin description. Get the best Pinterest marketing tips, ideas, and strategies for your business. I'm editing the board, so I'm going to click on the three dots. I'm going to click on edit board. You'll see that you can edit the board title. You could edit the board cover, which I wouldn't want to edit the board cover. I like that it's one of my pins, but I'm going to go to the description here. Pinterest is an amazing platform for business owners to use for marketing their content, products, services, and more. If you're wanting to expand your traffic and profit on Pinterest, follow this board for more Pinterest strategy tips. Okay, so I saw a little typo there, so I could go in and fix that. So that is really looking at assessing it, reading the description. Here's another board, side hustles for moms. That's pretty specific because my audience, a lot of them are moms. And I do believe that they will be looking for side hustles that pertain to them. A lot of times for moms, they might be at home. So that would also be remote, obviously, side hustles. So maybe not driving for Uber or doing something like that would require them to leave the home. So that's pretty specific. I could probably just have a side hustles board, but because it's so clearly speaking to my ideal audience, I like having that really specific board title. I also would want to come up under that, if somebody found me on a Google search as well. I would love for this board to come up under a Google search. Another really great question one of my students asked, should you be taking into consideration Google keywords when you're optimizing your boards, the titles, the descriptions? And I always tell my students, do your keyword research on Pinterest, because the way people, their mindset, the way they behave, what they're interested in, what they're looking for, it is different than Google because Pinterest is visual and they're using it in a different way. And so I always focus on my Pinterest keywords. And of course, if it comes up in a Google search, that's an added bonus, but I'm not optimizing for Google, okay? So you can think about it, when you are creating content on TikTok, yes, you want it to do well on TikTok. And if you can repurpose it for Instagram, that's an added bonus, but you're not creating your TikTok content for Instagram, if that makes sense. So we're typically creating on one platform and we can repurpose content a lot of times, but the whole point being here though is you are making it optimized for that specific platform. And that's what I'm doing here with keywords and on Pinterest. So this is quite a lengthy, and that's good, is many keywords. And one thing that you can see here is I'm using natural language. Do I think that a ton of people are going in and reading my board descriptions? Maybe not, but I don't think it looks good. It appears spammy. People might go to your boards, and when you just have a bunch of keywords stuffed in, I don't appreciate that. Maybe that's the Pinterest marketer in me. I really think that you should write it for the person and not write it for the artificial intelligence that's taking in that information and helping index your content. Okay, and I have seen this before. And I think that it's just because they don't know and they're obviously trying to get the keywords in. So I have to give them kudos for that. But I have seen business owners where they have a slew of keywords they know they want to rank for. They use all of those same keywords on every single board. That makes no sense. You need to use specific and different keywords based off of what that board is about. So this one, side hustles for moms. Are you a mom looking for a side hustle or a new career that will allow you to still support your family, but also be at home with your kids? I want my audience, if they read that, to be like, yes, that's me. On this board, you'll find the best side hustle ideas for moms that don't want to have to choose between financial freedom and being there for their kids. The best part about these side hustles are that they can be scaled if you're looking to make more income and impact. I actually didn't even include Pinterest Manager. So I could probably go back and include that because that is something as well that I want to rank for. So I'm actually seeing myself some little nuances and things that I could tweak to make it even more optimized, because really the only side hustle I talk about is becoming a Pinterest manager. So the other thing to keep in mind too is that I really want my students to be making this their new career. But I think a lot of people in the beginning are just looking for a side hustle. And the beauty of it is when we think side hustle, a lot of times we're thinking obviously part-time hours. And the amazing thing about becoming a Pinterest manager is that you can make a full-time income working part-time hours. And I know that a lot of the people in my audience, like I said, are searching for this. And I create a lot of content on it. So that makes sense for my boards. I'm trying to think of one that maybe I felt like I saw recently, I noticed, and I've tried to go back over time, but okay, sales funnels. This does not have a board description. So, and I do have a Pinterest sales funnel board. So when you're thinking about this technically could be a little broad. I actually would want to do a little more keyword research before I change the board title to see, should I make it more specific, or is it okay just having sales funnels? So obviously all of the content on here is pertaining to and talking about sales funnels. And a lot of times it's specifically in terms of Pinterest. So you can see here, there's even a graphic for a sales funnel. So how to create a Pinterest sales funnel and make more money for your business. So you can see here, very relevant to this board. As I'm cleaning this up, I need to add a board description here. So that is something that I would want to, whether I'm taking notes or I do it in the moment, I need to sit down and edit that. So I'm just going to go in another one. Like I said, I am not perfect. Social media marketing. This needs to be optimized. So I'm okay with this board title. I don't think that I would probably change it. I will say I would want to do a little bit of keyword research for sales funnels. I can't decide if I'm fully happy with that board title or if I think it needs to be a little bit more specific. The thing is I do have also Pinterest sales funnels. So that's pretty specific too. And it's obviously talking about Pinterest and how that uniquely is a sales funnel in itself. So I like to talk about the Pinterest sales funnel and how people, the first thing they're really doing on Pinterest is they're going to the search bar and searching. Then the next step is they see pins come up. And so then they're deciding, okay, what do I want to click on? What inspires me? And then they click on that. And if you can inspire them to leave Pinterest, then they're going to your website. So that's kind of how Pinterest funnels to your products, your lead magnets, your offers. And then once you get them to your website, then you have to funnel them into becoming your next customer. And of course, sometimes depending on what you're selling, that requires some nurture. So this would be another one where I'd write down whatever I need to do in order to optimize this board. And I'm also paying attention to, are my pins relevant? Am I pinning randomly? Are they relevant? Like, are the pins for the specific board appropriate? So Pinterest marketing versus social media marketing, best practices for optimizing social media assets for Pinterest. All of these are checking yes. So I could assess what's on this board a bit more, but also for the sake of time, I'm just kind of giving you an overview here. So I'm going to go through board by board. I'm assessing the titles, the descriptions. You can also assess the content on the board. One thing as you're assessing the boards, so this one, Pinterest traffic, doesn't have a lot of content. I just created this one a few weeks ago. All of the pins are mine. If you are assessing your boards and maybe it has a great title, it has a great description, but maybe a quarter of the pins are actually yours and all of the other pins are content from other creators, you have to ask yourself, am I creating enough content for this? Is this still something that I want to have? Could it be made secret for the time being? Could I merge it to another board? So, and then I've also seen business owners where the board pertains to their niche. They would be keywords they want to be ranking for, but they might not have any of their pins on that board. There's really no purpose in having that board unless, and of course, yes, it does serve your audience in some way, but on Pinterest, it's okay to be a little selfish. You don't need to be marketing other people's products, blogs, lead magnets. It's about driving traffic to your business. And if you want to pin up some stuff from other people, that's fine. And especially if it is serving your audience, but you don't need to have entire boards where you're just pinning other people's stuff. So that's something else to keep in mind, that maybe it does pertain to your niche, but you're not ever pinning your own content. So maybe it doesn't make sense after all for you to have that board. So this is really kind of a broad overview. I'm not going to get into too much into pins because that is going to be in next week's video. I'm going to be talking about spring cleaning your pins, what to be looking for, and some of that will get into strategy and assessing what you're doing. And it might not even be going in, and I don't really recommend like mass deleting pins or anything like that, but assessing what you're doing and simply thinking about what could you be doing better in the future, even with your pins. So I would love for you though, back to boards now, to go in, assess your boards. Maybe you have a notepad, you're taking notes of the things that you want to change, especially if it's too overwhelming in the moment to be making those changes in real time. But maybe you just kind of go through, assess how many boards you have. Are you pinning to them consistently? Do they all pertain to your niche? Okay. Are titles too broad, or, could you make them a little bit more specific? Are there any boards that are so specific that you could merge them together? So these are some of the things you're going to be looking for of course, like I said, assessing the titles, making sure every board has a strong board description, you're not keyword stuffing. So hopefully this gives you some really great ideas as you are cleaning up those boards. So I am going to wrap this up. I would love for you to let me know in the comments what other questions you have about spring cleaning your boards or cleaning up your boards at any time of the year. And I can't wait to wrap this up. And then also for next week's video where we will be talking more about, optimizing and cleaning up your pins.
I hope you found this episode so helpful. If you can't tell, I am so passionate about sharing all things Pinterest. And this series, Spring Cleaning Your Pinterest Account, this applies whether it's summer, fall, winter. No matter when you are watching these episodes, this still applies. Of course, it's a fun series to have in the spring and say spring cleaning, but it's so important whether you have been inconsistent on Pinterest and you need to get back in the saddle, so to put it again, that you're cleaning up your account. If you're just getting started, this still applies. Or maybe you're like me who has been consistent, but your business has started to pivot and change over time and you have some things that you need to go back, change, or update. So I would love for you to let me know in the comments, whether it be about optimizing your Pinterest account, what questions you have. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you found this helpful, or maybe even share topics you'd like me to cover in the future, because that helps me be able to come back week after week, serve you, and make sure that I am providing the best content out there for you in terms of marketing on Pinterest. So I would love for you to like this episode if you found it helpful. I shared what you could, mention in the comments, and then of course subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. I can't wait to see you soon in next week's episode. Bye for now, friends.